Dunkirk is the new Christopher Nolan film based on the true events of Dunkirk that happened in World War II. Basically, 400,000 men were left stranded on this beach with no means to protect themselves while the Germans were trying to bomb them and get rid of all of them. And this movie showcases what it was like to be there on that event, whether you're trying to get to the beach, trying to get off the beach, or whether you're up in the skies trying to fend off the German bombers. Christopher Nolan is a film god. The Prestige, Memento, The Dark Knight Trilogy, Inception. I consider those movies to be some of the best of all time. In fact, my least favorite Nolan film, Interstellar, is a movie that I don't even hate. I actually really enjoy. When your worst film is something that is still good, that is like the hugest compliment you could get as a filmmaker. So of course when I heard he was doing this movie about the true events of Dunkirk, I was really interested to see how he was going to go about it because number one, it's PG-13 and not rated R like a lot of other war films, and Nolan was talking about how he wanted to be more like a thriller as opposed to just blood and gore. And also secondly, I really wanted to see how this movie could stand out as far as war films go, because we've seen others like Saving Private Ryan and Hacksaw Ridge. So I'd imagine as a filmmaker, when you're making a movie in this subject area, that it must be tough trying to think of some ways to make it feel new or different than the others. And Chris Nolan pulled it off. This movie is intense. In fact, saying it's intense is kind of an understatement. At one point, I just realized, oh crap, I bit off a piece of my own flesh and I didn't even notice it, and I also saw it on a couple of my nails, and also I was bouncing my legs, both of them actually. My heart was pounding. This film got me heavily invested with just the pure amazing crafting that it took to make this movie. This is some of the best direction and filmmaking you're gonna see this entire year. I understand if you can't purchase an IMAX ticket because IMAX is a little more expensive, but guys, whatever you do, don't watch Dunkirk online. If you can't see it in IMAX, just don't watch it online, because your experience won't be the same. I would recommend IMAX though, because that movie in IMAX, it's made perfectly for IMAX. Nolan knows IMAX. You have Michael Bay, where he made Transformers 5, where the bars just shifted constantly and it was so obvious. Whenever the bars would shift from regular to just IMAX full screen, it was very rare, and it was usually during scenes that you wouldn't care to see in IMAX anyways. That's how you do it. And the cinematography is also gorgeous. Seeing it on that IMAX screen was just a breathtaking thing. This is one of the best looking movies of the year, one of the best sounding movies of the year, because in the IMAX theaters too, the volume is cranked up. The first gunshot that you hear honestly sent shivers down my spine. What Nolan has done, he's made a movie that actually makes you feel like you are with these people on the beach. You feel like you're with them every step of the way. So when you hear a gunshot, or whenever you hear the bomb coming down like, you feel like you're actually there and you're actually kind of bracing yourself for an impact. And Nolan was able to do this without making it rated R. This movie is pretty much bloodless for the whole time, I think. I don't remember seeing any blood, like, at all, even after the fact. And it's still as intense as ever. It kind of proves that you don't need to be an R-rated movie to be extremely intense. It also really helps knowing that they actually used practical boats and planes, and they actually used hundreds of extras, as opposed to copy and pasting them in post-production. Pretty much everything in this movie was real. In fact, I heard that he even crashed an IMAX camera intentionally just to get a shot, and that cost like hundreds of millions of dollars. That kind of just shows how dedicated that Nolan is to just the craft of filmmaking, and kind of why he's the film god right now. Because he could just go, well, we could just CGI this plane, just have Tom Hardy just sit in a set cockpit or something like that. But instead, they actually attach an IMAX camera to the Hurricane Hawkers, have them fly around, and whenever a plane would get shot down too, it wasn't like, boom, all the fireworks stuff. It would be like, you see a little bit of smoke coming out, maybe a little fireball, and it just, start to glide down. It's so realistic in that way. That's another thing that's really great about this movie, is that even though it's a movie that's retelling true events, you feel like you're watching something real because it's realistically portrayed. Whenever something blows up, it's not like Michael Bay, fireworks everywhere, or it just sets off like a chain reaction of like huge explosions. It's all handled realistically. It really does help you get invested with the story itself, and also the musical score. Hans Zimmer's score with this movie was incredibly well done, because there's this recognizable theme of like a tick, 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 or something very similar to just the ticking clock, where you always kind of feel like something's about to go off, and it really puts you on the edge of your seat, because you don't know if something bad's gonna happen next, or if this is just setting the mood of this scene right now. Nothing's gonna happen. You never know. It also really helps that the actors are also taking this as realistically as they possibly can. When they react, you're like, yeah, that's probably how most soldiers would react too. And it also is very diverse, with people freaking out, people getting angry at each other, or people just being really cool and collected about it because they're kind of used to it. I really do appreciate Nolan in that regard, because he could have just gone the easy route and said, alright, let's make this all theatrical, we're gonna have this big explosion right here, we're gonna have you sit down for like 20 minutes and talk about like your life and junk like that. Because this movie is very short, for Nolan especially. It's like an hour, 46, 47 minutes. It's his shortest one yet, I think, and the pacing is always on point. There's no slow parts, but it doesn't feel like they're rushing through it. It feels perfectly paced throughout. Unfortunately, though, this leads me to my one thing that's holding it back from getting an A+ for me, and that is that the characters you are watching, you're not hating them. You are watching them, the actors are doing great. They're being realistic as they possibly can, being respectful to probably the real-life people they're playing. I'm pretty sure that everyone in this movie was a real person and not fictionally made up. But for me, there's a difference between watching a character and getting to know them. You can watch a character and see them, you're not being annoyed by them, but you're just not seeing anything to connect with them over. You're seeing how they react, and it's very realistic, and I could get attached to him that way, and I was still invested with the story. It's not like the lack of characterization was taking me out of it at all. It's just that I wish that there was some way to connect with them more and know them better. Because even though this is a way more well-made film than a lot of other war films out there, and I really do mean that, a lot of the other war films that have come out were focusing on specific people, like Saving Private Ryan or Hacksaw Ridge. That movie was about the war, but it was also about the people in it. So when Scheisse hit the fan, you are also invested with not just the filmmaking and the action going on, but also with the characters. You knew them, you were seeing how they interacted, and you wanted them to survive. And of course you're watching this movie and you want these characters to survive as well, but there's just not that connection that you have with other war movie characters. Like, for example, the main character, I don't even remember his name. I don't think he actually said like a lot of dialogue either too. I barely remember any like important line of dialogue he said. I will give one actor this, Harry Styles. When he was cast, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Nolan, what the heck, dude? But Harry Styles actually did an okay job. He didn't do anything amazing where I was like, he should have been this role. This role feels like it was made for him to play. It was just, he was there and said some lines, and he wasn't awful, better than I thought, but he just didn't stand out at all. Like, he could have been swapped out with anyone. And I understand that people in the actual war, realistically, people probably wouldn't be ducking behind the trenches talking about their life and what's waiting for them, or there wouldn't be that moment where they just lay everything out there. And I also understand that a lot of the people in the war don't have emotional arcs or change throughout the experience. I get that, but I just would have liked to get to know them more. The closest we get to that is the subplot with Mark Rylance on the boat with Cillian Murphy, who they pick up, who's a soldier. There was some things there character-wise where I was like, this is actually really interesting. I want to see more of this. That's really the closest we really got to connecting with characters. Like Kenneth Branagh, for example, he's a Navy captain who wants to get the people off the beach, and that's really all we really know about him. What's Tom Hardy doing? He's a British Hurricane pilot. He's with the Air Force, and he's trying to shoot down German fighters. Do we learn anything about himself as opposed to just that? Not really. Is that a huge hindrance on the actual movie and the filmmaking, though? Absolutely not, because this movie is so well made that I was still invested with it throughout. This film is a filmmaking marvel. Nolan knocked it out of the park with this movie filmmaking-wise. There's so many great things going on here, and it really isn't a lot of people ducking behind cover and shooting guns. It really is a lot of survival thriller. I was invested throughout. My legs were bouncing, biting my nails the whole time, heart pounding. It is such an incredible experience, and as a war film, it is one of the best well-made war films out there that you could get. I'm gonna give Dunkirk an A. I can't wait to see what Christopher Nolan does next. He is such a god of filmmaking. He really is. You know, he knew exactly how to craft this film to make it as suspenseful and engrossing as possible. So even if the characters were kind of lacking, that experience, You can't get that anywhere else with any other film. This is one of the most engrossing film experiences that you can have. However, I think a perfect A-plus film is something that exceeds at everything that they have to offer. And character-wise, you can watch them, and the actors are doing a great realistic job, but I just really couldn't connect with them as much as other war film characters. However, go see Dunkirk. Please, this movie should do extremely well because it is such a great film. Because of all the practical effects, because of the expert level cinematography, sound design, score, there's so much greatness about this movie. Go see it immediately, dude. IMAX, preferably. But if you've seen Dunkirk, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.